Welcome to this first webinar with Lisa Arora on visual mediation.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. It's so great to meet you. And it's top of the morning where I live, but I recognize it's evening where you are. So you get double points for showing up at the end of your long day. So I really, really appreciate that. Why are visuals needed, in my opinion, so desperately in situations where there is tension, there is a conflict, there is a dispute? What is so different about those situations, and why are visuals so extra powerful there? What visual mediation actually is. So what do I mean when I use that term? What does it look like in practice? And then I thought I could share with you my own observations from my own practice, not only in my 10 years of visually facilitating corporate team-based meetings, but also in my couple of years experience in separation and divorce mediation, the things that I notice about how it changes the dynamics for people in their sessions. So there's this really common phenomenon that everybody thinks they can't draw. And for a lot of people, that's a barrier to getting started working this way, or to being able to kind of shift their identity to being a visual practitioner. So I will do my best to convince you that you can work visually even if you believe you can't draw. And then before we part ways, we can tell you a little bit more about the details of the program if you happen to be interested in that. I have found my way into the world of visual facilitation about 12 years ago. It really shifted the dynamics in the room. I have worked all around the world in all different kinds of meetings at all different kinds of levels. In every single one of those meetings, I see that visuals create they naturally create a culture of collaboration in a meeting. Humans just are naturally visual, and we've got science that backs that up. We've also got human behavior to back that up, right? Visuals are a language that humans naturally understand, but if you work verbally and you also capture the important parts of the conversation and reflect them back to a person visually, people retain 80% of what they see. So I think this is significant for people who work in processes, because if you're not working visually, you're leaving a lot on the table in terms of communication.
When people are under pressure, Lisa, specifically when there's a dispute, would there be a difference in those numbers?
I came home from a business trip and my husband said, I'd like a divorce. I had the painful experience of going through my own divorce. And so naturally, that's a very stressful life event for people. And so this makes me chuckle. This is exactly what my brain looked like on the inside during my divorce, right? Everything in your world deconstructs, and you have to figure out how to reconstruct that again. And so the reality is that when people are in a conflict, whether it's underlying tension in a team, or a knockdown, drag out divorce, whatever the scenario is, when people are in conflict, it's sort of to state the obvious that they are under stress, right? And that's where neuroscience comes in. When people are under stress, they have a hard time hearing and understanding someone else. And so, the amygdala in the brain gets overactivated, and in comes that fight, flight, freeze response, and it interferes with communication. People literally can't process or store new information the way that they usually can. And so we have sort of that science piece around that as well. So this is kind of the heart of why I think it's very important, particularly in dispute situations, to use visual communication. as you're working with your client, you are jotting down important things that you're noticing, or perhaps they're questions you want to loop back to and ask a little bit later on. And this mediator was doing that. But because there was no trust, we were working from a place of negative trust in the room. Yeah. I found it really difficult. And so this was sort of me, right? The whole time I was desperately trying to scoot my chair closer to that mediator so I could just get a peek of what was on her notepad. Because I was like, what is she writing down? I can't see what meaning she is making of what he is saying or what I am saying. I don't have any way of knowing that she's understanding me the way I want to be understood. And I don't know what's going on in her brain. I don't have any evidence that she is being impartial. And so as a result, I had a real difficult time trusting her expertise. Had we been creating a shared record of what we were talking about, even if it was just a gross little sketch that didn't look pretty, that we would have had a way of understanding that we were or were not making the same meaning of the conversation. And so in the last couple of years, I have been speaking at dispute resolution conferences and noticing the themes of those conferences. And there is absolutely a very clear call for the field to really internalize what it means to deliver service in a way that is client-centric. What does it mean to work visually? It's really about working your process the same way that you usually would. And it's the practice. So that word practice is important. That means it becomes your habitual way of doing your work. So when they can see that bird's eye view of where the process will go, it sets them up to feel more confident participating.
And do you sometimes put a pen in the hand of the clients, or
sometimes they take it?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sometimes once they see me working on the wall, you know, I've had people say, "Can I just get up there and just show you something?"
Yeah. And would you encourage that?
Pardon me?
Would you encourage that to do?
I certainly wouldn't discourage it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In the process of learning about working this way, that little nasty voice rears its head so many times, which says, I can't draw, I could never do this. Gosh, I could never do both of those things at the same time. And what I would say to you is that this really is not art. So don't get confused. This is not about being an artist. This is a form of communication. Visuals are a language with a vocabulary, and you can learn to speak it. In terms of how we apply visuals, I think of there as being 3 applications, and they accomplish different things. So I said earlier, you might use a visual to quickly help people understand the process that they're entering into. And that accomplishes what I call an information push, right? You as the process professional knows some set of information that your parties need to know in order to be empowered participants, in order to know what they're getting into. And so you are pushing that information at them and hoping that they can quickly and easily comprehend it and get into the process. So here's an example of an information push. This is a map that I use for people when they come to begin a mediation process. And so I will meet with them in a pre-mediation meeting. And this is a 4-foot by 8-foot map that is on the wall. It's on the wall when the person arrives. And while I'm getting them their cup of tea, they are already looking at this information and they're digesting it. This information otherwise is typically communicated to people in a text-based document that would be emailed to them ahead of time, or it's just delivered verbally from the mediator. But when they work with me, we have a conversation about this map that they can see. And it orients them to kind of the big picture of what is mediation, why should you bother to work this way, what is mediation not, and how does the process work, and who's involved, and what do I walk away with at the end. So it kind of answers all their big questions and lets them see the process kind of from that bird's eye view. One of the beauties of working visually as well, I think, is that you can use imagery to help set a tone or send a message. Mm-hmm. So this particular map, it's not a coincidence that the big circle in the middle of the map, in the most important location, is a picture of people working collaboratively with a photograph of their child on that tabletop. Mm. So the image is sending a message to people immediately that the child is at the center of their decision making. Another example is using a visual template to accomplish an information pull. So this is an example of a visual template. When you know a few things about templates, you can design and create your own to fit whatever process you use. But this is one that I created because in every mediation I do, there's a predictable step right at the beginning where we need to set the foundation for a successful conversation. And so I locate them and I say, you know, that's you in that boat there, and you're in stormy seas. Your job is to navigate your way, you know, figure out a way to paddle together to get around that big obstacle that's in front of you, that big iceberg. And if you can successfully navigate your way around that, there's better days that will wait you on the other side. So then the third way of using visuals to accomplish that information pull is to just simply start with a blank piece of paper, part of your process that's more organic, right? You don't know where the conversation is going to go. Here is a real live mediation, or part of one, where we started with a blank piece of paper, and these parents were trying to figure out how do they get from the parenting arrangement that they have now to their ideal scenario where they've got equal shared parenting. When you work visually, you up the transparency in the room big time. Yeah. Because your parties can see whether you are understanding them the way they mean to be understood. And everyone can sort of compare their perception of what's happening to the record of what has happened. So I said that you can learn to work visually even if you can't draw. That includes 99% of people I meet who will tell me that they can't draw. And my answer is you can work visually because visuals are a language. The same way that you learn to speak Spanish, for example, one word at a time. You start with hello, goodbye. Eventually you're able to say, where's the bathroom? And you can put a sentence together. And, you know, if you stay with it long enough, you can write a poem. Your work doesn't have to be pretty. In fact, I would argue it shouldn't be pretty, because these should look and feel like rough, raw working notes. These are just thinking notes. We don't want to memorialize these things. We don't want to, hang them up on the wall and look at them for the next 5 years. We're hoping that people move past the conflict. So these maps should just look like rough, raw working notes that are going to get, disposed of once we've got agreement, and we'll leave it behind. So like this map, there's nothing pretty about this map. There's no imagery on it. There's nothing pretty about it. Mm-hmm. So it can be rough and raw.
I was divorced in 2013, and I only remember 2 things about the mediation procedure, and they were both visual. And I looked them up for you, because the mediator, she started by showing us this. Let's see whether I can make it visible for you. Is it visible? No, huh?
No, it's very light screen. We see a line.
Okay, she showed us how the process goes from to mourning and accepting.
Oh, here.
Ah, yeah.
Mm.
So that's how I realized that I was ahead of my partner, and that he was angry, that it was normal for him to be angry. He was just not accepting yet. That was one thing.
There you go.
And then we had to agree on how to divide the time spent with the kids. And that was really difficult to speak over and over again, until the mediator gave us a scheme. And she said, you have pink and you have green, and go fill it in. And then it became very easy to make an equal division of time spent with the kids.
Yes.
So the answer to your question is, yes, I will.
Particularly around scheduling issues.
Yeah.
Saves so much time. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But that I also the circle of loss, I draw it in the air. When I realize now, I don't do anything visual. I do things visually. Because the circle of loss,
exactly.
and acceptance, I do it now. I do it in the air. You're here and you're here. You're not in the same place. So I work, and I think I work with my hands, maybe too much, but that's also a kind of a visual,
You are drawing in the air. We just
need
a marker in the fingers.
So for the moment you're using your hands to show something, you can just, why not pick up a marker and go to the piece of paper and draw it, so people can really see and remember it even better.
And the schedules for their children, childcare is also very. It's a good example.
Yeah.
But the rest, maybe step by step. I'm not that confident. I'm just curious. I'm open, but not yet confident.
Yeah.
And I think you're very right, Mariska. It's great to do the learning, but I always suggest to people that they start small. Like, start with something that you're comfortable with. Start with one approach, and once that's integrated into your practice, then you build from there.
And what I need is also little examples of little pictures about maybe a picture of alimony, a picture of the little drawings.
Yes.
Children, alimony, the house, the taxes, little, all those things that occur so often in your sessions. So little standard drawings.
Yeah, that your brain knows well, that you can draw in your sleep.
Yeah, that's what I need. Yeah.
Just to tell you a little bit about our offering. When you register for our offering, it's, I think, a helpful blend of both online and in-person learning. So the moment that you register, you will get instant, lifelong access to comprehensive online instruction videos. So I spent about a year of my life developing these instruction videos. So when you register, you'll get a login. You'll be able to log into a dashboard that looks like this. There's a welcome video. You click on your training and it will take you to your 12 instructional videos. Those cover everything you need to know from soup to nuts. So, you know, figuring out visual, you know, the vocabulary of a visual practitioner, to figuring out how to set your space, what supplies you need, evaluating your practice for where the opportunities are to work visually, that role of being a visual listener, how you filter and synthesize what people are saying and make decisions about what goes on the page. There's 2 modules in here on drawings, and then there's some modules in here about how to create your own templates that fit your process, how to create information graphics that communicate what you need to tell people, thinking about practice standards, actually being using ways of bringing what you capture back into the process, so folding it back in to make the process more rich. A little bit in here about how to get off a piece of paper once it's created and turn it into a JPEG, and then some tips around how to market yourself when you become capable of working visually. So you get all that in the online program. The stuff that's circled in yellow, sort of that listening piece, the actual being up at the wall and developing your own visual vocabulary, is a huge part of what we focus in on in the 2 days of in-person instruction. So those are skills that people find really helpful to learn in person, where they get hands-on practice up at the wall. And so you would get 2 days of in-person instruction with yours truly. And you'll also get a toolkit with all of the basic supplies that you need to get your visual practice started. And lastly, I just like to point out that while there is visual facilitation training in different parts of the world that's available, this is the only program that is nuanced to situations where there is a dispute. So I mentioned earlier how different that filtering, making decisions about how what goes on the page, how that is so different in a situation where there's conflict. This is the only training that is nuanced in that way. And you can have your pick of dates. We've got 2 offerings that you can see up there. Yep. And you can register. If you're interested in registering, you can visit the website that you see up here on the screen. If you scroll down, you will see a register button. And if you are compelled to register in the next 48 hours as a thank you for joining us here today, you will get 5% off of your registration fee. If you guys have more questions that pop up, you can feel free to email them to us, and we can respond back to you or deal with them in the next webinar.
Okay, excellent. And of course, if you want to visit the next webinar, feel free to join again.
Thank you very much for this webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with me.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Lisa. Bye.
Bye-bye.